What are the hidden forces shaping our reality? These teachings are symbolic and esoteric and rooted in inner experience and metaphysical insights rather than scientific descriptions. So, to begin with, this video is a sacred teaching on how black light, Saturn, and the scalar energy relate to our healing and spiritual evolution. If you're doing shadow work or if you're navigating deep life changes, this will speak to the hidden architecture behind your path. So there is a field behind what we see, subtle, but not passive. It pulses and it breathes and it responds, and it's called the scalar field. In metaphysical terms, it's not a scientific force, but the first inner vibration arising within the black light before form. So, welcome to Starwell Astrology. My name is Shari, and I am a Western tropical astrologer with a very special interest in shadow work, astrotheology, and esotericism. If this video is of interest to you, please consider subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment. Also, I want to remind you that I do offer a free weekly shadow work workshop every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And if you'd like to join, just send an email to starwellastro@gmail.com. I do also offer personal natal chart readings and one-on-one shadow work. So, in my previous videos, I talked about the black light as the unmanifested womb of all potential. The black light is the dark luminescence. It is the ground where possibilities exist before form. God, as creator, or what we might also call the absolute source of all, emerges from the black light, which is the unmanifested feminine ground and the womb of creation and consciousness. It is the infinite potential before form. It is also the silent void that contains everything. It is also the silent radiance before let there be light. So God, as the logo, speaks through the black light. And the black light is not a God. It is what God or the monad or the one source of all arises through from this pure potential. And it begins to stir into becoming. And this is important because it allows us to see how we are co-creating our external experiences from a deeper level. Some may equate the black light, spirit, and the ethers as the same field of energy due to the feminine archetypical qualities, but there are some important distinctions. Spirit and the black light are related, but they're not identical. Since we now understand that the black light is the unmanifested feminine ground and the absolute void of formless fullness, and the pre-consciousness potential holding everything in rest, it's also the womb of being and the zero state. It is the stillness before spirit moves. So this is what spirit is. Spirit is the conscious movement of black light into creation. It is the breath or the will of divine intelligence. So, what role does the scalar field play in all of what I'm saying? The scalar field is the first inner vibration within the black light, animated by spirit. God as creator emerges through the black light. God as local speaks through it. Spirit begins to move through this vibrational field, which is called the scalar field. So the scalar field is not spirit itself. The scalar field is the carrier wave activated through the divine command, let there be light. In Genesis, the darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. This is Genesis 1:2. So the darkness over the deep is the black light, and the Spirit hovering is the breath of God stirring within stillness. So the scalar field, like I said, is not spirit. It's a subtle pulse that receives and transmits spirit through the ethers into vibration, into geometry, and finally into form. The geometry that precedes form is the Vesica Pisces, often called the seed of life or the flower of life. I may repeat myself many times in this video, but the repetition helps to clarify and anchor these very deep concepts. So please bear with me. So now let's add another layer to the ethers. We talked about spirit, which is the breath or divine will and its consciousness in motion. And then we talked about the scalar field, which is the vibrational current that carries that will. So the ethers is the invisible bridge through which spirit moves, preceding the matrix, but it is not the matrix itself. So once spirit moves through the ethers, form crystallizes and patterns get projected, and the matrix, meaning the manifested experiences, are born. But it all begins in the silence of the black light, the unspoken womb of the pure potential. So, in simple terms, spirit rides the scalar wave through the ethers to reach form where the matrix, or also called the holographic reality, is projected. Now, to review, the scalar waves is the preformed vibration. It's not scientific, it's not linear, and it expands spherically like a heartbeat. It doesn't travel through space, but it interpenetrates it. It holds the blueprint of form before form exists. So the scalar field is not electromagnetic, it's pre-electric, pre-magnetic. It doesn't move in waves the way light does. It spirals, it breathes, it responds to the coherence of intention. And this is where it becomes personal. The scalar field isn't just a cosmic backdrop, it's a living resonance within us. It responds to our emotional frequency, our intentions, and the coherence of our inner state. The black light is the potential, but our feelings are the charge that organizes the potential into form. And this is why our emotional truth shapes our reality long before our actions do. And this brings us back to the Vesica Pisces, the archetypical womb of manifestation. When our inner resonance is coherent, the Vesica becomes the gateway where potential becomes form. And when we are incoherent, meaning unstable, then the Vesica mirrors exactly what we hold within. So the pure potential, silent, unshaped, and undirected black light is activated through the scalar field that moves within it. As the stillness or the pure potential becomes organized, the Vesica Pisces appears, a pattern is formed, and two fields intersect. Those two fields are spirit and matter. So the Vesica Pisces is the first gateway of creation where unity becomes duality and consciousness begins to differentiate. So the Vesica is the bridge between spirit and matter, the beginning of polarity, which is the light and the dark, the active and the receptive, above and below. It is also intention that begins to take shape. But intention alone doesn't create physical form. It must pass through structure, resistance, and time. And that is the archetype of Saturn. He adds boundaries, definition, and he also becomes the crystallizer because he's the architect giving shape and durability. Saturn tests, he adds pressure, and he defines the edge of possibilities. The Vesica opens the portal for reality to be born, and Saturn grounds the pattern into form. Saturn is not a punishing archetype, ultimately. His role is to preserve the sacred architecture of the soul's intention. So, the black light, which is the womb of the pure potential, and the scalar field breathes within the black light, and spirit intentional current moving into creation, and ethers, which is a subtle bridge that carries this movement. With the Vesica Pisces, we have the first contraction and geometry of creation, and then Saturn is the skeletal frame that anchors and tests the form. Together, they form the metaphysical bridge from the unseen to the seen. So the material world takes shape through you individually and collectively. It happens through your thoughts, feelings, and intentions. They are the transmitters interacting with this entire architecture. You are not separate from the field, you are the signal. So, why am I telling you this? Because what we call reality is not just happening to us, it is what happens through us, from us, and because of us, expressed through the inner field of consciousness that shapes what we perceive, manifest, and live out. So, we are not just observing reality, we're co creating it, and we're sending the signal that shapes what appears. Thoughts, feelings, and intentions matter more than we are conditioned to believe. These three inner currents continuously encode the field, but we must remember that the field is not linear. It reveals itself in flashes, moment by moment, responding instantly to our inner state. So thoughts are electric. They spark patterns, they shape meaning, and they direct the current. The feelings are magnetic and they draw experiences into resonance with our emotional truth. And intention is the seed that crystallizes reality, aligning thoughts and feelings into the architecture of manifestation. So, together, these forces ripple through the scalar field of consciousness like pebbles dropped into still water, reorganizing reality in real time. But here's the catch: if we carry unconscious wounds and suppressed emotions, as well as our old narratives, we emit distorted signals, and the inner field becomes scrambled, confused by shame and guilt and grief, abandonment and old conditioning. And so, this is where shadow work enters. In this realm, emotional coherence is essential because it is the frequency that actually travels through the scalar field to shape our reality. When our beliefs are distorted, whether through unresolved trauma or wounded core beliefs or a narrative that is part of our conditioned programming, those distortions become broadcast signals and we project this into our external experiences. Shadow work, therefore, is not just emotional healing, it is field calibration. Deep shadow work illuminates what we've kept unseen, and it cleans the lens of our inner signals, making the unconscious conscious. It refines and tunes the signal, and it dissolves distortions at the root. When we become coherent, we don't just attract a new reality, we phase lock with a deeper current that generates it. Coherence is not force, it's alignment. So when we're in a coherent state, manifestations become harmonic participation. Our synchronicities increase. Miracles happen naturally. So let's talk about the two layers of our reality: the scalar ether level, which is the realm of pure potential. This is the pre structure and the archetypical realm, the source of our soul's intention. It is also the seed state of reality, where there are probabilities and possibilities, and timelines are sewn in at the soul level. This is also the revelatory realm, where we can receive true insights, intuition, and gnosis. This is the invisible architecture behind the external world or our external life. And this is why emotional healing isn't just self care, it's quantum work, because the scalar field does not respond to thoughts alone. It responds to your deep feeling state and organizes reality around that frequency. And when that resonance becomes coherent, the Mandela cascade begins, which is subtle shifts in probability aligning your life in real time. So the black light is not empty, it's responsive. It holds the code of your soul, but it's also mirroring the unresolved shadows you carry. And this is why coherence matters, because our thought, emotions, and spirit must align with the scalar pulse to become a tuning fork for miracles. Now, the second layer of our reality is the electromagnetic layer, and it's the first visible expression of the scalar field. This is the realm where intention condenses into frequency, vibration, and form. It is the dominion of our physical experiences and tangible events, as well as measurable outcomes. It's the visible blueprint of the soul's internal signal. So the electromagnetic field is not separate from the scalar field. It is the scalar field slowed down into vibration. So the place where consciousness becomes perceivable as frequency, as above, so below. Your outer world is the echo of your inner signal. So thoughts direct, feelings charge, and intentions align. This is the inner triad: heart, mind, and will. Now, the mind is the thoughts, is where we hold our thoughts, and it's the architect. And the heart is our feeling nature, and it is the magnet. And the will is in our gut center, and it is our intention. It's what initiates. When there's coherence, these inner patterns become outer form. The ether and scalar crosses into the electromagnetic field and manifests reality, and life arranges itself around your true frequency. So, shadow work is the method that allows us to metabolize our true feelings and make them conscious enough so that we're no longer broadcasting from shame and guilt and rejection. We must go deeper than healing the personality. We must heal at the level of the heart, the dwelling place of the soul. And when the heart opens and its coherence is restored, our intention aligns with our true nature. And the mind becomes harmonized rather than polarized. And this is what creates genuine emotional coherence. Emotional coherence is the missing link. Modern manifestation techniques tend to bypass the emotional layer. They use positive thinking instead of feeling into resonance. Vision boards are necessary, but they're bypassing the nervous system integration. It's wonderful to have beautiful intentions, but unless they have real emotional power, we get nowhere. Shadow work that just manages our feelings rather than healing through to the soul level at a heart level is not as productive as we would like it to be. And because without emotional coherence, nothing stabilizes, the signal still stays distorted and split, and the field cannot hold. So the work that we may have accomplished will be temporary. We tend to not be able to sustain whatever efforts we have put into manifesting through these techniques, unless deeper work is done where we start to awaken from the heart. Without emotional truth, intentions fall flat. Without coherence, the soul's message cannot be transmitted. So, why am I saying that mainstream methods tend to fail or fall short? Well, first of all, they don't go deep enough. Things are oversimplified and marketed to us in a way where it feels easy. We tend to go that route. We avoid the shadow because we think it's uncomfortable. And plus, there is this cultural amnesia that allows us to spiritually bypass. But emotional healing is not a detour, it's actually a bridge. And when shadow work is practiced at a surface level, it really becomes self improvement because we're managing our emotions. And although we analyze our patterns, we tend to reframe them so we can feel better about them. But it still leaves the ego intact. Deep shadow work dissolves the ego's defenses. It feels through to the wounds and reveals the raw presence beneath the story. When we're doing deep shadow work, it's not just self help, it is soul remembrance. It is where the real healing begins. There's a lot of fragmented wisdom out there. The inner heart's wisdom was once sacred, hidden, and protected. And New Thought traditions carried only the outer shell, and the fire of the emotional alchemy was forgotten. We were taught to think, and it will be. And thoughts alone is not enough. Mental reframes cannot ignite the soul. We need emotional transmutation. This is precisely where Saturn returns to the stage, because when the ancient fire is forgotten, Saturn becomes the guardian of what cannot be bypassed. Where culture drifts into mind only spirituality, Saturn holds the line of embodiment. Where teachings separate thought from feeling, Saturn preserves the law of consequence. Where the heart's alchemy was lost, Saturn guards the gate back to coherence. Saturn ensures that whatever we build internally or externally must rest on truth, not illusion. We must integrate, we cannot bypass. And we must have coherence to avoid fragmentation. So Saturn, the architect of time and form, shapes spirit into matter and gives weight to all healing. He translates potential into embodied practice. Saturn is the guardian of karma, truth, and consequences, but he does not punish, he structures. He will test the integrity of our coherence, not based on what we wish for, but what we actually embody. This is why Saturn stands at the threshold between distortion and divine order, and between the fragmented ego and the unified soul. So Saturn brings us to the threshold of mastery. But mastery is not stagnant. It is the moment when structure becomes spacious enough for the higher field to flow through. Because once Saturn refines our coherence, the scalar field responds instantly, not slowly, not gradually, but in flashes, moment by moment, mirroring our internal alignment in real time. And this is the secret most traditions never taught. Reality does not unfold in a straight line. It appears in pulses, in frames, in scalar flashes that reorganize themselves around our resonance. When we are incoherent, the flashes are scattered. When we are fragmented, the field becomes noisy and distorted. And when the heart is closed, the frames cannot synchronize. But when Saturn has done its work, the heart is coherent, the soul is aligned, and our intentions, feelings, and thought ring as one. This is when the scalar flashes lock into harmony. The inner field phase aligns with our outer field, and a Mandela cascade begins. So the Mandela cascade is the Oversoul's way of showing us that we have entered coherence at a structural level. It is the moment when timelines overlap, synchronicities stack, realities reorganized, old probabilities collapse, and new pathways miraculously appear without force. And this doesn't happen through chaos. It is a reconstruction. It is your oversoul updating your visible reality to match your newly coherent inner state. And the Mandela cascade is not random, it's a response. It's the outer world rearranging itself because the scalar field received a clearer signal. So Saturn calibrates and the heart ignites, and the field flashes into coherence, and the cascade delivers the new timeline into form. This is alchemy of embodiment. This is the architecture of miracles. And this is the Oversoul reclaiming authorship through you. Saturn brings us the threshold of mastery, not the mastery of control, but the mastery of coherence, where truth becomes the structure of the soul. Where truth becomes the structure, the soul can finally inhabit. Because once Saturn has refined us, once the heart is open and the emotional field is stable and the scalar field begins to respond immediately, reality no longer changes slowly. It shifts in flashes, frame by frame, each moment restructuring itself around the vibration we are holding. And this is the hidden engine of creation. The world appears in pulses of possibilities, organized by the resonance of our inner state. And when we're fragmented, the flashes disperse. When we're wounded, the field distorts. But when the heart is incoherent, timeline cannot stabilize. But when the inner field comes into alignment, when thought, feeling, and intention and the soul breathes as one. And this is not magic, it's the physics of the soul. Saturn calibrates the vessel, and the heart ignites the signal, and the scalar field responds in flashes. The Mandela cascade delivers the new world into form. This is the architecture of inner alchemy. This is how the unseen becomes the seen. And this is how the oversoul reveals itself, not above you, but as you. When your inner field becomes coherent, reality has no choice but to organize itself around the truth of who you are. Well, thank you for joining me, and I hope you will consider subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment. That will help my channel to grow. And thank you for watching. And don't forget that I do offer a free shadow workshop every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you'd like to join, just send an email to starwellastro@gmail.com. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.